I got friends that I know that I'm only gonna hear from in a time of need. I got friends that hit me up when it's been a long time they ain't heard from me. I got friends that will just be cool if I make that call and tell him it's peak. If he puts you on a shirt, he did it for me, it's a loyalty. I got friends that won't go anywhere else, she calls me the TBE. I got friends that I call my G, couple day ones with me. I got friends that started out like that, but she turned into a queen. Back in the palace ain't where you find my royalty.
The next topic we're going to discuss on Boxing Bros. The WBC refuses to sanction fights that feature assigned male versus female. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but it was announced that USA Boxing was going to start allowing transgender fighters to compete. All right, so we're going to take a look. Now, this is IFL TV, which posted USA Boxing has introduced a new transgender policy into their new rules for 2024, meaning transgender athletes who transition from male to female will be able to compete against females under particular conditions. Thoughts? So here's the rule. We'll dive into some of it. So it says, a boxer who transitions from male to female is eligible to compete in the female category under the following conditions. The athlete has declared that her gender identity is female and has completed gender reassignment surgery. The athlete, for a minimum of 4 years after surgery, has quarterly hormone testing and presents USA Boxing documentation of hormone levels. The athlete must demonstrate that her total testosterone level in serum has been below 5 nmol/L for at least 48 months prior to her first competition, with the requirement for any longer period to be based on a confidential case-by-case evaluation, considering whether or not 48 months is a sufficient length of time to minimize any advantage in women's competition. The athlete's total testosterone level in serum must remain below 5 nmol/L throughout the period of desired eligibility to compete in the female category. So that's that. Michaela Mayer responded. Michaela Mayer, who's fighting Natasha Jonas this upcoming week, next weekend on the 20th, responded on Twitter stating, hormone therapy is banned. By default, this should make trans athletes ineligible for competition, period. Doesn't matter how you feel about the situation. Fact is, it's illegal and completely disrupts the even level playing field that sports work so hard to create. That's what Michaela Mayer had to say. So we're now we're going to take a look at some of the situations where there was a trans woman who competed against a cisgendered woman, and we'll get into some of these definitions in a little bit later. But here is an example.
And now, making her way to the cage,
so let me mute this. But as you can see, that is this athlete is transgendered. It's a male who transitioned into being a woman, and as you can see right there from the storyline. But let's jump into the fight. All right, so here's the fight right here. As you can see, they're in a bit of a grapple, and then bang, one knee. There it is.
Man, Shorty's still
how devastated she is, disgruntled, discombobulated, and everyone's checking on her to see if she's all right. So here is the post-fight interview with the transgendered woman.
Right now, I'm feeling excellent. That was sweet, huh? Did you like that? Yeah. And I want to tell you in this tournament, every woman in this tournament better look out.
Look at Trill's face.
that was that particular instance. So we're gonna look at another example of this time. This is a cisgender woman competing against a cisgender man. So I'll break it down for you. So cisgender just means that the individual, their gender identity is the same as their sex assigned at birth. So some people believe at birth you're assigned either male or female as your sex, but your gender identity is the gender you identify as, right? Which society constructs, right? So basically, this is a woman who a female who identifies as woman and a male who identifies as man, fighting each other. Lucia Rica, the former women's boxing champion. This is her in the reddish orange. I'm not really sure the color shorts, and she's fighting a man. And we're going to take a look at what happens. You see? Just in case you missed that, I'm going to rewind it and bring it back. So you see, they're fighting a kickboxing match. Lucia Rica's in the reddish shorts, and the man is in the green. And you see she's swinging, and then she gets caught right there, froze, and she's down.
Left hook to the jaw, man. It's crazy.
Now, Lucia Rica at the time was one of the most vicious female punchers, and she's one of the best female athletes in boxing history. And this guy is just, for lack of a better terms, an average male athlete. All right, and you see what happened there. And of course, throughout the history, they've always had the media will show you certain things that may not necessarily be factually incorrect, but incomplete. So here's a clip from the show Sports Science where they compare they see who punches harder to see if this guy who's a professional sparring partner can tell which one of them is a man and a woman. And so let's take a look.
3, 2, 1, punch. Boxer number 2. Ready? 3, 2, 1, punch.
Hadouken!
So who hit harder?
This is the big moment. You survived.
Yeah, barely.
Tell me what you felt. Tell me what you were feeling.
I really couldn't tell the difference between the first punch and the second punch.
So he said he couldn't tell the difference, right? Which I believe he's being honest. But the difference is Lucia Rica is one of the hardest punching women to ever live. And the guy who she's competing against is a professional sparring partner. And the guy who she's punching in the stomach is also a professional sparring partner. So it's not like she's competing against someone who is equal to her in terms of accomplishments in the male realm of sports. So, all right, in the men's realm of sports, I should say. So we're going to now bring this video up a little. All right. And so now they decided they're going to use a machine to determine who punches harder between this men's sparring partner in Lucia Rica. Let's take a look.
2, 1. How do you think you did?
Good. That's powerful.
Mo's best shot smashed our dummy with 710 pounds of force. So can Lucia really match that? Doubtful. She'll be at a disadvantage because men typically have between 10 and 20% more muscle mass than women. Most of it's packed into the arms, chest, and back, which should translate into a bigger punch. So let's see if Lucia can really match Mo's force.
All right, we're ready to go. 3, 2, 1. Oh my God. You broke the dummy. You literally blew out the back of his head.
Sorry.
So how hard did this girl hit?
Lucia has a very strong punch. She generated 922 pounds of force.
922.
So as you see, Lucia Rica generates 922 pounds of force. But let's just do a quick rewind. You see the man, he just throws your standard straight right hand.
Exactly.
He would actually throw this punch in a fight and actually possibly land this punch in a fight.
How do
Right?
you think you did?
Compared to Lucia Rica, who she just used torque and she lunges and she does all she can to whip and generate force. And positions herself to throw a hook that she would never land in a fight. You could never land this hook in a fight. And the guy did not do that. If he did, he would have generated more force than he actually did. So take a look at the hook. And this is something that you gotta know.
So
You
let's
wouldn't
see
know if you don't really know
Lucia
boxing
can
like
really match Mo's force.
uses everything to lunge into this punch.
All right, we're ready to go. 3, 2, 1.
So do I dispute that she threw the harder punch? No, but they threw two different punches. You would have to do punch for punch, the same exact punch.
Man, this is no science, man. We don't even know if they're the same weight class, bro.
Exactly. And there goes the other point that I try to tell people. It's like, why did they select this guy?
Exactly.
Of all the guys they could have selected. Because there's an agenda that they wanted to push at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And so the last thing I'm going to show before we discuss this is something that went viral recently is Clarissa Shields sparring a guy who is about 20 pounds lighter than her and who quit boxing after he was knocked out by Rollies.
Yes. Oh. Yes. Oh.
This guy quit boxing after he was knocked out by Rollies, who's a champion at 140 pounds, who many people believe is the weakest champion at 140 pounds. That's why you have everyone calling out Rollies' name. And Clarissa Shields is called the GOAT because many people view her as the greatest boxer of all time. Yet when she was sparring with this man with headgear and big gloves, he still dropped her in devastating fashion in a manner in which no woman she has fought was ever able to do. And the WBC has vowed that they refuse to sanction these fights, and that the WBC will only sanction fights between people who were assigned the same gender. I mean, not same gender, the people who were assigned the same sex at birth. All right, so I'm going to start this off by turning it over to, I don't even know who I should turn to first. I guess I'll turn it over to Trill Dollar Bill, man. What's your reaction to all this?
I'm not even going to say right is right and wrong is wrong. You know what I'm saying? I'm just going to say, and listen, I would say use your common sense. And I know common sense isn't common, you know, but let's just use common sense here. You know what I'm saying? Just look at it like this. Would you, let's just say you had you had a daughter. Would you allow your daughter to compete in a combat sport against a man? It's just common sense. All this stuff is just common sense. I know this ain't got nothing to do with which side you on. Why everybody gotta make everything so complicated, man? Why can't it just be just cut and dry? It's just, to me, it's common sense. When it comes to sports, I'm cut and dry right down the middle. You know what I mean? Anything else in life, it's whatever. I'm just saying in sports, in competition sports, if you're going to say it's a girls' track meet, then it should be a girls' track meet. If it's a boys' track meet, there should be a boys' track meet. If it's women's boxing, it should be women's boxing. If it's men boxing, it should be men boxing. That's just how I feel. Cut and dry, up and down. You don't have to agree with me. That's just how I feel. That's just my opinion. You know what I'm saying? I'm not the all to be all. It's just how I feel. You know? I ain't better not see my daughter doing MMA. I better not see no boy put my daughter in no armbar. That's just how I feel. And that's just me personally. You can do whatever you want to do where you're at. But me personally, it's cut and dry for me. It's common sense. But like I said before, common sense isn't common.
All right, G.
Yeah, I'm actually in full support of what the WBC has ruled on this decision, and the reason why is because I think people have a misconception between sex and gender, right? Your sex is biological, right? So when it's biological, that means it's something that we can measure, right? So we could determine things based upon biology. But when we're talking about gender could be defined as cultural, social. I mean, a lot of factors that, like, based upon the individual is how they define gender, right? And so to base a sport based upon gender rather than basing the sport on sex could be confusing. And when you have rules and regulations to make sure that the sport is safe for all participants, you can't view it from from a standpoint of gender, because again, who determines, to the extent what gender really is? You know what I'm saying? And so, for example, even when they were talking about the rules of allowing a trans woman to participate in, female like boxing, it's talking about their hormone levels, right? But it still doesn't highlight the fact of muscle mass and bone density, which, once I'll say once a male goes through, years of puberty, that's when they develop most of their physical structure, right? You taking estrogen pills, to lower your testosterone levels isn't necessarily going to transform your bone structure, right? Or even your muscle mass to that degree. So, and now you lived X amount of years of your life as a quote unquote man, right? Gender wise. And then you decide, like, hey, you know what? I truly believe that I'm a woman, right? Which is nothing wrong with that. You have the right politically to do whatever you want. However, what makes it difficult is now when we have boxing organizations, federations, things of that nature, trying to establish rules to allow everyone to compete, this is where it causes the problem. So the fact that WBC is like, hey, you know what? We're just going to keep it at based upon your assigned sex at birth. I'm actually in agreement with that, and I hope people don't think it's transphobic in any way. We have to think about the safety of these fighters. And I know this isn't it's kind of the situation, but it wasn't. It's like, I still remember when Cruz Dezern fought Jimenez, right? Now Jimenez was a woman transitioning to be a man, but nonetheless, that fight to me was like a man versus a woman or a male versus a female, where the whatever testosterone test or HGH, whatever she was taking, that got her bigger, stronger, that got her leaner, that got her with a deeper voice. It showed in that ring where Cruz Dezern was getting mollywopped, like straight disrespected. It literally looked like watching domestic violence, and I remember Dezern lost, her WBC belt, and I was just like, wow, this can't be fair, right? And it wasn't until like a couple months later she got reinstated and everything like that. But nonetheless, it's these type of problems that will happen it'll happen more often if, in fact, we allow, fighters to be fighting not based upon their sex, but based upon their gender. So that's why I'm actually in 100% agreement with WBC on this.
Yeah, and I think you and Trill made some good points. And for starters, I think the key issue is to address what did the court mean when it enacted Title IX? Because in Title IX, it talks about men and women's sports, right? But did they mean men and women as a social construct, or did they mean sex assigned at birth? The way it is currently viewed in society today is gender is a social construct, and there are even more than two genders. Although when Title IX addressed equality for women's athletics, it used two genders, men and women. Although that's different as defined today from sex assigned at birth, right? So the question is, was the court considering trans women to fall under the umbrella as women when they created Title IX? right? So I think that's the key issue. Before I jump into this, I want to say that I believe in inclusion, and everyone should have a space where they can compete. Everyone deserves to have equal opportunity to prosperity, life, liberty, and prosperity. And I believe everyone should be able to live their truth. But we're talking about athletics and competing in athletics and whether or not allowing a trans woman to compete against cisgender women would disadvantage the cisgender woman. So let me break down some definitions, because in order for me to explain this, and this is a very complicated thing, so I think in order to get into this, we need to have some understanding. Sex versus gender. G just brought this up. Sex is really biology. It's the reproductive organs assigned at birth that determine male or female, right? That's based off chromosomes and hormones, right? And and sex assigned at birth, only a female can give birth and only a male can impregnate, right? And there are certain biological differences that come with male and female. And as you saw from sports science, males tend to have 20 up to 20% more muscle than females, particularly in the upper body. All right. Gender is a social construct, right? Basically, what society deems a male's role is and a female's role is, but men's role and women's role, right? And so there's masculine and feminine, right? So men tend to be associated with masculine behaviors, and women tend to be associated with feminine behaviors, right? But then there's this thing called gender identity, which is a person's internal sense of being man, woman, or neither. So gender identity is how someone sees themselves. So based on gender identity, you can have someone whose sex assigned at birth was female, but they identify with the role as man. Follow me? Which brings us to transgender. Transgender, persons whose gender identity differs from the sex they were assigned at birth. That's what transgender is, right? And cisgender is someone whose gender identity is the same as the sex they were assigned at birth, which makes cisgender. So basically, to put this in the topic of discussion, we're talking about transgender women versus cisgender women in athletics. And just to add, there's gender expression. Gender expression is how a person publicly expresses or presents their gender, right? Now, I'll move on to where I think this is extremely relevant. Title IX. Under Title IX, it's a law recognized that it's a law that recognized education as an equal right for all. Within the title, there was a clause prohibiting gender-based discrimination in sports, granting equal opportunity to both men and women in sports. Now, the question is, when they said men and women, were they implying gender identity, or did they mean sex assigned at birth? Because if Title IX was to protect sex assigned at birth, although a male someone whose sex assigned at birth was male and their gender identity is that of women, they still wouldn't be able to compete in women's athletics because their sex assigned at birth was male. So, continue. The intent of the law, men and women. All right, so let's move on to this real quick. So, for me, when you consider what they meant, you have to look at what has actually transpired since trans women have been allowed to compete against cisgender women, right? Since trans women have been able to compete against cisgender women, trans women have shattered records that were set by cisgender women. Meaning someone assigned the sex male at birth who identifies as a woman and competes in women's athletics has had the upper hand in the benefit and even shattered records by women who identify as the sex they were assigned at birth. When you look at the opposite, when you look at trans men who compete against cisgender men, they actually don't perform as well. So that means someone who was assigned female at birth, who identifies as a man, whose gender identity is man, when they compete against cisgendered men, they don't shatter records. And in fact, they don't perform as well in comparison to their counterparts. So in closing, I ask these simple questions. And it's not up for me to decide, but I ask these simple questions just based on the information. What you saw from sports science, what you saw from these examples of combat sports, and even swimming, in which the trans women are dominating in swimming, track and field, and these other sports. I ask you this question in closing, and this is about the plain meaning of Title IX. If men's athletics is dominated by humans assigned male at birth, and women's athletics are dominated by humans assigned male at birth, should a reasonable person conclude that Title IX was enacted to include athletes assigned female at birth and to protect athletes assigned female at birth? Again, I just want to wrap this up again just because we went through all these. If men's athletics is dominated by humans assigned male at birth, and women's athletics are dominated by humans assigned male at birth, should a reasonable person conclude that Title IX was enacted to include athletes assigned female at birth and to protect athletes assigned female at birth? Because if it didn't exist, sports would just include and be dominated by those who were assigned male.
Let us know how you feel in the comments section. Please like and subscribe. Check us out on Instagram and Twitter. And please check out our podcast on all major streaming services. Fucking Pam Palace out right now.
Right.
Go check it out. You know you rock it with the Boxing Bros.